Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sunday with me, Jay Barsky. I'm happy that you're listening to this podcast. I'm happy to do another solo podcast with you and talk about some things that have been on my mind that I've been planning on to discuss for a while now. But before I get into that, I just want to get into a couple of things that I've been working on previously, especially with the podcast, starting with the podcast. Anyone that's been following, you would notice that the last two episodes that I posted, the interviews were with one was with Leia Hager and Raul Hernandez. I'm introducing this podcast to a variety of people of different backgrounds that I feel like could definitely share a lot of insight, knowledge to help people, to help not only motivate people, but help grow by listening to this podcast. And it was fun having Raul. Raul's my boy. He's over in a Dade County with Dade County Comedy. He's always has great shows lined up, and it's fun that I can always just watch and maybe jump on the mics at the end of the show. So I kind of he's always has fun shows around that I try to get to when I maybe do multiple mics or just checking out multiple shows in various areas. That's kind of a good idea, which you'll see in these future podcasts, just a mix of, again, my comedy friends or just new comedians that I've never met that I would love to have on the program, along with other people with different professions that have a lot to offer on this podcast. So I'm still building up the podcast. I try to do a number of things to kind of build it to help the listenership, to help it grow, to help people find it. And usually that what really helps is when I just do my comedy and just go out to the open mics or different shows, because that's how people are exposed to me and find out about me, and then we'll find end up that are really interested in knowing following any content that I might have, or any material that I have, any content I might have out there, and they can just come across this podcast. On these solo podcasts, I'm going to try to put in more research. In the last solo podcast I posted, I was giving out more research on just mental health, the difference between anxiety and fear, along with just drinking more water. So I like to just fact check myself every once in a while just to make sure I'm following the correct research. I might want to start putting references, maybe links to those episode notes so people can directly see what I'm referring to instead of me just citing the source of where I got the information from. So if you're interested in kind of knowing more about the research part, and maybe if you have some ideas to offer about how to offer more information on the research on the topics that I'm discussing, please feel free to reach out to me. And as you'll probably notice in when I had the previous interviews, the first one with Leia was via Zoom, but I'm building on my home studio so I can have guests to come over, and then we'll just have offer better audio quality. So Raul came all the way from Miami, and it was awesome to have him over my place. And if you got a chance to listen to that interview, you can hear good audio quality between both of us. And that's because I just purchased an extra mic. Nothing. So I'm currently using a Shure SM7B mic. Usually that's what the professionals use, which is the top quality mic to use. I only have one, but as I try to build up this podcast, maybe I'll try to obtain a second one. If anyone wants to donate a SM7B mic to me, I would love that. That would be awesome. But I do have an extra mic, just got an extra mic, and it kind of helps me with my stand up because when I'm reciting my lines, some comedians will actually maybe use like a comb or something like that, actually to help with their stand up. And what I do, like after I kind of jot down what I need to say for my bits, and when I'm actually saying it out loud and reciting, I usually actually was using my pump for my bike tires. It's kind of the closest to what would look like a mic in my place. So that's why I just had that. But now that I have an actual mic, I kind of just can use that. So it feels like the closest thing by the time I'm ready to go into the open mics or showcases to try out my material. So the in-home studio, I'm just kind of slowly building that. slowly, just starting small, just again with the audio quality, just focusing on just doing the best with the audio quality. And if once I'm able to comfortable enough to do kind of upgrade, that's when I'll probably do more like adding on video cameras and doing video podcasts and stuff like that. But I also want to take these podcasts on the road and travel. That's why I've just teach myself on how to use all this equipment. It doesn't necessarily always have to be like closed dark studio on a couch or something like that. If you're really familiar with all this equipment on how to make sure that the recordings are nice between during an interview, there's just so much you can do with various equipment. So that's why I'm just learning. I kind of already have the knowledge to do that, but I just need to slowly develop this podcast. And like I said, to help not always just do it in the home studio or maybe via Zoom, but also take it out to the road and maybe do live podcasts. That's something I would love to do at some point. Like I've seen like the improv shows over around here. They have some live podcast. So that's something also I want to learn to do in the future is to do live podcasts like that. Cause that would be the ultimate for me. But so I'm just building up that over time. I plan to have more guests soon on this podcast. So this is going to be the solo podcast that's going to be posted, but I may be able to pop out one more podcast. I was thinking maybe have a guest, set up an interview. So I have someone in mind. So I may work on that. So just keep an eye out for that. I may or may not be able to post something. I'll try my best. I try to keep myself busy when I'm not doing these podcasts to just promote myself out there and just still doing the stand up, trying to get more better into social media content. I'm not always able to post a lot of stuff on Instagram, but Twitter is actually something I've been trying to get better on. I feel like I'm slightly getting better with Twitter. I just try to post more like motivational, sometimes comedy stuff, just things that would are on my mind that I think would help other people. Outside of that, I've also been doing some other projects, working on some other stuff. I was building up the profile for the Apple Music and Spotify that I had since I posted the Someday EP that's on there. So outside of the podcast and comedy, I've been just trying to more focus on more stuff to talk topics on talking about as a motivational speaker. I was trying to build up the profiles on the Apple Music and Spotify. The last solo podcast that I posted was titled No Fear, and it was just coincidentally that it kind of fell in line in the month of October, which is the month of Halloween. It kind of was just a right fit for me to condense what I've mentioned on on that podcast and just made a single out of that, in which I think it was like 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes that it came down to, and I just added that onto what I did on the Apple Music and Spotify and all the other content. I mean, can't really call it music because it's not. I haven't really used any instrumentals, but it is available on Apple Music, or maybe you can just say Apple. I'm not too sure on that. So it was kind of cool because I also had a cool photo, a cool headshot photo that I've been using on some stuff. So it just fell in. I think it just all fell in line. I like Halloween. I'm a festive person. I like the holidays and stuff like that. So I get into it with the holidays and did my dress up and stuff like that. Going back to working on the No Fear single, so that's released. I think it's the top single now. It actually beat the last one was Manifested, but now the No Fear is the most downloaded on Apple Music right now, or that you can see on Apple Music on the chart. I'm just building all of that up to maybe try to make a compilation album, which maybe my goal for next year is to come out with a volume one compilation album to come out as I post all these solo podcasts and just put them down to more condensed singles. I can put them all together and make that compilation album that could be posted on pretty much anywhere where you can get your streaming. And I'm always open to various ideas. So if there's anything you want to discuss with me on, just share an idea with me. I love to just hear your thoughts. I love to just hear from listeners on what they think about these podcasts. And it's great feedback to be honest with you. I'll get into a little more of why I wanted to talk about that, especially with the No Fear podcast in a little bit as I talk about the main topic on this episode. But to talk about more fun stuff to do, which is comedy, I've been pretty busy with this 5 minute set. It is something that I've actually been working on for almost the start when I started getting into comedy. I won't try to talk too much of these bits into my podcast, but it was something that I kind of been working on, and it took a while for it to mature as a set just because I wasn't hitting up too much mics on it because I kind of want to what I typically like to do depending on the set is I like to marinate on it, just listen to when I record myself, I just listen to it, maybe try to reword a couple of things, just try to remove some wording to make the topic more comfortable, even for me when I bring up something that I don't not too sure that it's ready yet. By the time I'm putting it out there, once I put the words out there, I am talking it into a mic. I'm committed to it. I have to appear confident in what I'm talking about because I am standing out there in public, just presenting my thoughts. Now it's come to the point that I've made it pretty funny. I've worked on it at a couple of showcases. The last showcase I did was at a kava bar, and personally, I think kava bars are underrated. I like kava bars. When I lived in the Fiji Islands, I drank a whole lot of kava. Sometimes I would go nights with people, maybe drinking almost a gallon, at least a gallon of kava, going 24 hours straight, drinking just kava with a lot of the villagers. I like it. Kind of buy a kava bowl or drink or something like that. And just kava just more relaxes you on your body, kind of just numbs the body a little bit. Last thing I'll mention is I'm working on trying to build up motivational seminars maybe by the next year or two. I treat every motivational topic that I discuss like I'm treating working on a 5 minute bit. I'm trying to build up some material, start maybe doing motivational seminars starting maybe sometime next year or two. And this just requires me to do a little bit more research on other motivational speakers and seminars they've posted on YouTube and other outlets that I can try to observe myself and maybe add my own comedic twist to any motivational seminars. I treat them like how I do my bits. So that's just me, nothing really big or major, just things I kind of already done and maybe just polishing it up a little bit, along with preparing some things coming up for the new year. I do want to mention one more thing though. December is my birthday month. It's a big year for me too. I really want to occupy myself and do a lot in within that month. And this is kind of just finishing up the current 5 minute set that I have. Just trying to work on a new one. I haven't started yet, but just trying to work on a fresh 5 minute set. Hopefully, it'll take me from putting pen to paper to it actually going out to the public. It might take me maybe 2 to 3 weeks to just push all that together. We'll see how the month of December goes. I may be busy with other things. Hopefully, like I said, I'll try to knock out one more interview podcast. Sometimes I get spurts when I'm motivated to do these podcasts and I'm a little distracted, which I should be focusing more on my comedy. And it's vice versa. Sometimes I'm really motivated on my comedy and I get a little distracted to the point where I'm not focused on my podcast. So it's a balance I really need. I sometimes struggle with myself. I'm trying to develop that routine, and just my body and mind kind of just naturally jumps into the next thing, whether it's comedy or podcasting. And I don't really need to feel that I need to jump in and motivate myself, since it's kind of already innate with me to focus on various things. So I say all of this because it gets into this topic that I want to talk about, which is staying consistent. So I want to open up this topic with a quote from Nelson Mandela. If you're not familiar with him, he's the first president of South Africa, which he was the president from 1994 to 1999. He passed away a few years ago in 2013 at the age of 95. Probably one of the most popular quotes that he's known to say is this: the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And I say this because we all fall along this journey as we try to grow, getting better. And this is just not comedy. This is just trying to get better as a person, getting better as a human being, just trying to do good for the world. And as we try to develop and grow, there's times when we're going to be challenged either by ourselves or by others. And there's going to be times where we fall. Doesn't mean when you fall, it doesn't mean you failed at it. It just means you fell. It just means you came across a challenge that you weren't expected. This happens when you get too comfortable. I get too comfortable in some situations. I get challenged. I get challenged by a situation that I've never came across before. And it challenges not only myself as a person, but it challenges my ego. So I fall. That's okay to fall because whether someone's going to help you or you're going to go on your own 2 feet, the point is you're going to get up. That's the point. You're going to get up for after you fall. Sometimes it's nice to have a helping hand, but independently, you should be able to pick yourself up, motivate yourself because that motivation comes from within. Ultimately, motivation comes within yourself, within your heart. It comes from within your gut, and then it exudes out of you in order to help release that energy that you need to in helping you motivate you in helping you achieve your goals. And it's common to plant these fears in your head, these exaggerated experiences that may not even come in your life when you are preparing yourself to maybe go somewhere that you're not comfortable going, or maybe doing something that you're not comfortable doing in order to help you achieving your goals. The fear is exaggerating a scenario that may not even ever come close to what would be happening in reality. At points where I've fallen myself, it's easy to stay down. It's easy just to not get up. You may even lack the motivation to feel that energy. You may lack the motivation within. But what help fill that void where there's lack of motivation is consistency. Even I'm not always motivated in doing all the things that I love to do, whether it's this podcast or doing comedy. I get overwhelmed on a lot of things. I mentioned I get things get too comfortable for me. And when things get too comfortable for me, things get easy. When things get easy for me, I don't feel challenged. And when I don't feel challenged, I don't feel like I'm helping myself to achieving my potential. I had to look back at things I've done recently, especially my accomplishments in what I've done in October. I didn't realize how much I was doing. It was, I think, going into October, where I was getting a little too comfortable with everything. I wanted to do more. I think I pushed myself to finally do what I wanted to finally. Maybe took years for me to just start it as a seed in my head to actually make it into reality. Had to look back and I did a lot of things, but I just was doing so much that I didn't take a break and actually look back at all the accomplishments and just should have sit back and realized should have sit back and relax and enjoy myself. So that's what I'm doing now. I've been able to get back on my healthy routine diet and exercise again. Just doing my stand up once in a while. I kind of want to take a break going into December and just enjoy my birthday month. Just joy. I'll still do my stand up, maybe have a showcase or two, but I just want to be me, just focus on me and relax. And I just kind of want to do what bears are known to do and just hibernate. Build up that motivation again. I like to hibernate, especially in my in home studio, to focus on this podcast. And when some nights when I do my stand up and I just the audience is right, whether it's a big audience or small audience, just my engagement with people after, there's some nights that feels like magic. It feels like the stars are aligned, that is everything goes well for me that night when I'm just doing multiple mics, meeting great people that I can introduce on this podcast. But I don't expect every night that I do that to happen. There's nights that I don't expect that to happen at all, and it just becomes such a great night for me. I like that I just kept putting myself out there. So there's going to be times just because you've had those achievements, those accomplishments that were just recent and fresh, that makes you motivated, that gives you that build that energy, that builds that confidence, inflates that ego that you can do anything that you want, which is a great feeling to have. But you're going to come across those challenges that are going to make you fall at some point, and it's okay to fall because you can pick yourself up because you're consistent. When that motivation lacks, remember that when there's that gap of there's no motivation, that there's nothing that can be used as a tool to motivate you and drive you in wanting to achieve those goals, just remember to be consistent. That motivation is going to come like waves. Sometimes those waves are going to be small, sometimes those waves are going to be massive, but they're going to come in waves. And the whole point is that you should just ride that wave until the next motivation wave comes. So that's all I want to say about staying consistent. Just be consistent. When there's times of no motivation, just stay consistent and that motivation will return in itself. But whatever it is, that motivation will come back to you at some point. Now to the outro. This is something that I wanted to recommend for listeners for a while now. Just I haven't got enough solo podcasts to get to this point. But now I'm happy to get to this point because I really wanted to recommend this to anyone that hasn't used this tool yet, and is to invest in a whiteboard. Whiteboards can be range from anything from maybe $1 or two to maybe a little bit more than that, just depending how big you want your whiteboard to be. And whiteboards are so easy to just set up somewhere, whether it's on your fridge or maybe on your wall somewhere. And there's a range of things that you can use a whiteboard for. I've read ideas that people use it for, as a food menu, something like on a typical diet, chore list, which I kind of do for myself, and also inspirational quotes. I use whiteboards a lot more as a reminder, but you can say that's kind of used as a chore list as well. I just have kind of on my fridge, I have a to do list of anything that I need to actually get to. I met people along the way that like to actually write inspirational stuff on their wall. No judgment from me on that, but every time I see that or hear that, I get Jack Nicholson vibes from the movie from Stephen King's The Shining. So anytime I see stuff like that, I always think of The Shining when Jack Nicholson's character is writing a lot on the wall. That's why that's something I don't do it because I don't want to give across Shining vibes. So what I like to do is just have a whiteboard for myself. I do have stuff on my wall to inspire me, to motivate me, and then other people can hopefully admire it and just be motivated on it as well. But I do keep a whiteboard for different things. I keep a couple of whiteboards in my home office. I'm trying to look at my whiteboards right now. I have a really big whiteboard more for comedy, and this is just I have it labeled as jokes. I mean, they're also considered bits, but jokes is what I want to label it as. And so I just have different topics that I remember to write. So that's my main big joke whiteboard, just because I have a lot of different ideas for different bits that I'm working on. So it all doesn't really come together just yet. So it just takes some time for me to kind of formulate a new bit. So, like going into the second half of December, I'm probably going to be reviewing this whiteboard, just staring at it for some time, and just whatever different topics that kind of draw closer to me, I'm just going to grab those and try to work out those bits. Then I have another smaller whiteboard. This one's just more focused on the podcast. And I'm thinking I may need another one because I do write a lot of stuff on topics as well. I treat it as I'm doing my bits. So I just have these same different topics, probably more serious, less funny, but I have it a lot in bullets. And I treat it kind of like a roadmap because there's different topics that I want to get to, but I kind of have to work my way around these other topics that I've already listed on here. So that's kind of half the board. The other half of the board is kind of more just a reminder for me, different tools, different items to use to help on your craft as in your joke writing. So I use that just as a reminder when I'm working out these bits that's on the other board. And how can I make it funny if it's not funny enough? Or what am I doing that's different? What I haven't focused on? One thing that I want to start challenging myself as a comedian that really grabbed my interest a lot lately within comedy is actually roasting. I think roasting is really fun. It's actually intentionally that you can You can say an insult that's actually well crafted to make it funny. Think roasting is very interesting. I don't see too much of it. And I not one to usually try to roast people during my stand up. I like the idea of maybe trying to participate in a roast battle because it kind of just gives me permission to roast. It just unleashes a different skill that I haven't tried out yet. And at least with roasting, you kind of can prepare for who you're going to roast. So if they were told you that your competitor is going to be this person, you can, if you know the person a little bit, you can try to prepare some jokes and insults along the way. That's something that I haven't experienced myself. I've been just trying to attend more shows with roasting. I just went to one, I think last night. It was like a Thanksgiving roast battle, and that was really fun to watch. And I think there's another one coming up that I really want to see. And roasting usually comes during the holidays too, like especially around Thanksgiving, Christmas, whether there's local roast battles or maybe just look up YouTube stuff myself. But going back to these whiteboards though, I don't typically have an idea and run to these whiteboards. Sometimes it just takes a while for an idea to get to these whiteboards. Typically when an idea comes up to me, whether it's mostly for stand up, but maybe something else that's really important, and what comedians will do is carry a pen and a notepad to save and try to remember to write their bits. What I typically do when I have an idea or something like that, I'll just text it to myself. If it's something that I just need to remember and then I know that I'm not, and then I'm going to forget it in maybe 5, 10 minutes, I'm going to immediately just text myself and at least I'll get that notification pop up on my home screen so it can remind me that when I get home later, I'll just remember to write it on the board. Sometimes it takes some time and I'll forget those texts, but at least I have it saved. So some days I'll just reserve some time to review those texts that I've already texted myself to see if it's something that I need to remember to put on the board or something that I've already reminded to myself that I've already done maybe a week or two before. A lot of my ideas may that get onto these boards usually start as something as simple as that. As I described, I like to use whiteboards more as a motivational tool. So I use a lot of these whiteboards as erasable blueprints for me to get goals that I would like to achieve. So that's all I wanted to recommend for you. Get a whiteboard, invest in a whiteboard. I love whiteboards. So hopefully you'll get one too at some point. If or when you do obtain a whiteboard and you set it up and you set it in a way that you are happy and you're using it as that blueprint to achieve your someday, I would love for you to reach out to me and tell me how it's working out. But that's all I wanted to say to you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Sunday with me, Jay Barsky. Remember to stay consistent on everything that you do. Remember to stay consistent on on getting to that goal because you are going to achieve that someday in your life. I know you can do it. You know you can do it. So let's do it together. Thank you for listening. Keep an eye out for any upcoming episodes. If you wish to follow me, you can follow me at I am Jay Barsky on everything. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.